Hi everybody, this is Cage Minds. I'm Micah. We're going to be talking about UFC 130. Originally supposed to be Edgar versus Maynard to get a decisive lightweight champion. Due to injuries though, that is off, and now we're to the point where it's Quinton Rampage Jackson versus Matt the Hammer Hamill in the main event, with the co-main event of Frank Mir versus Roy Big Country Nelson. As we do on this show, I'm going to start at the bottom of the card, starting at the first fight, work my way up on my prediction and breakdown to the main event. So as we have it, the first fight of the night is going to be Renan Baroa, and if I mess up anybody's name, I am so sorry. I am horrible at that part. Versus Cole Escodarvo, who has a record of 17-6. Baroa and Escodarvo are both renowned for their grappling abilities, submission artistry, as Baroa has 12 career submissions, Escodarvo has 10, so I almost think that their abilities should nullify each other, and this fight could remain standing. At the feet, I'm giving the advantage to Baroa, though. He's a little more comprehensive. He has a little bit, I think, higher class of training, and a little bit higher in his level so far of his striking abilities. I'm looking for him to take a unanimous decision victory. Moving on to the next fight, we have Michael McDonald, who has a 12-1 record, taking on Chris Carousel, an 11-2 record. McDonald has big heart, big KO power. He has adaptability to almost any kind of fight situation he gets into in MMA. Chris Carousel has big promotion experience fighting with the WBC and Strikeforce, now being in the UFC. His victories have been hard-earned. He looks like he's coming up, but I'm liking McDonald a little bit more. The KO power is what's decisive for me, as they are both stand-up oriented fighters who kind of adapt to where it goes. I see, though, Carousel is more of a Muay Thai guy who's more of a pick your guy apart, points kind of guy, not really the big knockout power. I see McDonald, though, with the big knockout power and a big knockout on this night. Moving on to the next fight now. It's Gleison Tibau. I found his record of 32-7 on one website and 22-7 on another website, so not really quite sure actually what his record is, but it's somewhere up there. He's a UFC veteran. I know I've seen him plenty of times. Big heart, big physique. He's taking on a last-minute replacement, Rafaelo Oliveira, who is 14-3, who is replacing Bart Palashevsky. He's a last-minute replacement. But this is a man who in 3 months did win 3 MMA fights. So, short notice, being on call, he's adaptable to those kind of circumstances. These are, again, both Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts, with Oliveira being a little more of the artistry on the ground, having more submissions to his recognition. Tibau, though, still more submissions than TKOs in his career, but every time I see him, he likes to stand, bang, brawl a little more, use wrestling, becoming more effective in an all-around balance. I think that all-aroundness of his game is going to lead him to a victory over Oliveira, the last-minute replacement. To the next fight, we have Kendall the Spider Grove, the 6'6", 185-pounder who is Ultimate Fighter Season 3 winner, taking on Tim Boetsch, a former 205er, dropping down to the 185-pound middleweight division, who has a record of 12-4. Boetsch is known for big heart, strength, grappling ability, and a good chin. Well, I think that's a perfect recipe to make it a long night for Kendall Grove, who's kind of long, kind of skinny, susceptible to the grappling, susceptible to being taken down if the fight so goes that way. Boetsch needs to go that way. He needs to go right with his strength, not play around with the striking ability of Grove, not play around with the jiu-jitsu, try to do a takedown, get in there, and start pounding. I see that being the recipe. I see that being the way the fight goes. There's always a chance, though, Grove could sink in a submission. Long limbs, and he's slick with the submission game, picking Boetsch, though. Moving on now to the next fight that's going to be seen on Spike, where we have Miguel Torres, 39-3, a man who in his career has had a 17-fight winning streak. He was a 2008 Breakthrough Fighter. He's a former WEC Bantamweight champion. This is the next level up in competition for Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson, 13-1. He has conditioning, speed, and awesome technique. He is also very good at changing levels from his striking to his takedowns. That could pose a problem for Torres. This is a good challenge for Torres. the way him and his camp in the TriStar gym look at fights, the way that they look at the whole artistry of battle. This is something to try to go out his weaknesses. If he's susceptible to the takedowns, he's going up against a man that has a much lower center of gravity, so that could pose as a disadvantage. I'm hoping that Torres uses his length, his experience, and I'm predicting the experience is going to be the decisive edge, and this fight could end in a submission. That's my pick, is a submission victory for Miguel Torres. Moving on now up to what will be the pay-per-view card. We have Brian Stann, the All-American, at 10-3, taking on Jorge the Sandman Santiago, who's 23-8. Also, Sandoku middleweight champion, now coming over to the UFC due to their financial problems. Brian Stann, All-American, on Memorial Day. I don't know if I could pick against him losing at all. Last time we saw him, I didn't think that anyone could just flat out knock out Chris Lieben, and he did that. Jorge Santiago has vowed to not be as aggressive, to not leave himself open. But as Brian Stann stated in his UFC 130 countdown interview, for him to lose at this event on this night, on this weekend, is impossible for him to conceive. So I can't conceive it either. I'm thinking he's going to be able to pull this out. The heart, the pride, the American on American holiday weekend. This is what will do him, what will push him to the victory. I see a unanimous decision victory. I don't know if Santiago will allow himself to open up to make this a firework type fight. Going with Brian Stann. Moving on now, up the fight card. As we get closer to the main event, the fights get bigger, the fighters are getting bigger. We have Iago Alves and Rick the Horror Story, two men that are well built and physical. They both like to throw their mass weight and their physiques around, and their striking. They hit very hard. This fight could take place on the feet for the most part. Want to stand there, test each other of the bravado of the man. Alves is 23-6. Rick Story is 12-3. Both men are looking to get up that echelon to get to a title shot. Rick the Horror Story looking to kick in the division and make his place known. Iago Alves is reestablishing himself and making his foothold definitely in the upper echelon of the division. Which fighter wins this fight? If they keep it standing, Alves has a tremendous advantage and more array of weapons. I like his leg kicks more. He has better technique. He has more practice time in on it. Rick Story is not to be slouched at, though. He has this raw boxing knockout power, and he's also able to control the fight with takedowns. He has the wrestling background. If he's able to use the wrestling background and take Alves down, he could win rounds, he could win a decision. If the fight stays standing and the ego of Story takes over, wanting to prove that he's the better stand-up fighter, I think Alves will take the victory of a unanimous decision. Not seeing really either of these men being knocked out. This could be a long one. Further moving up the card to a bigger fight, bigger boys in a different way. Now we're going to some taller guys. The 6'11", Stefan Struve with a 24-4 record, the skyscraper, taking on Travis Browne, 6'6" Hawaiian, who is repping a 10-0-1 record. That one being his draw to Czech Congo, which was a little bit shaken. There were some low blows. There were some takedowns that weren't accounted for. Browne, I thought, won that fight, came out on the better end of it, came out looking like the less beaten man. What we know about these men is that Browne has the big power. He has some clinching ability. He can take the fight to the ground if he wants to. I don't think that'll be in his best efforts, though, as that's where I feel that Stefan Struve has his greatest advantage over Browne. It would be his long limbs, his jiu-jitsu, his technique, his submissions. He is just that much higher of a submission artist, to the point where he is a submission artist for being a heavyweight. I see that being the difference in this fight. Even if he gets hurt and this fight does go to the ground, Struve has this incredible ability for coming back. I think that'll be the difference. I see him sinking in a submission and taking a victory over Travis Browne. This leads us up now to our co-main event, where we have Frank Mir, 14-5, former UFC heavyweight champion, taking on Ultimate Fighter Season 10 winner, the 16-5 Big Country Roy Nelson. These men have met before in other combat sport tournaments, grappling. They know each other, they like each other, they're friends. This is not a hated rivalry. They're coming in to put on an entertaining fight. That being said, with both men feeling that way, I don't know if we'll see much grappling or ground game out of them. I like Frank Mir's stand-up, but don't count Roy Nelson out. He has an overhand right that has knocked out Stefan Struve and Brendan Schaub and could do the same to Frank Mir. Frank Mir, though, could also land a big knee like he did against Mirko Krokov and end the fight. I'm thinking that just a couple month longer layoff that Roy Nelson has had could also pay some effect. The ring rust, I'm taking Frank Mir in a unanimous decision, seeing neither men really finish each other, but seeing it as an entertaining bout. Leading us now to the main event, Quinton Rampage Jackson versus Matt the Hammer Hamill. Quinton Rampage Jackson coming in with a 31-8 record to Hamill's 11-2. Hamill's actually a year older, though, than Rampage. Rampage, we know the striking, the slams, being a Pride champion, being a UFC champion. Matt Hamill wants that stuff. He's coming up to that echelon. He's a 3-time Division III NCAA wrestling champion, and that's the key to this fight. We saw that Rampage Jackson, his last bout against Rashad Evans, another pure wrestler, that was the last time he had some real problems. Lyoto Machida didn't really have those kind of Browne abilities, the takedown abilities, that we didn't see that much. In that fight, Rampage was able to walk forward and stalk a man who was trying to use mobility and move backwards. In this fight, neither man moves backwards, both men move forwards. If Hamill gets caught and gets into a precarious position for himself, he would resort back to what he knows best, that is his wrestling. We'll have to see. Is Rampage's health? Is he in shape? Is he ready for that? Can he stop Matt Hamill's takedowns? I'm not thinking so. I'm thinking Hamill is smart enough to use the takedowns to win the rounds and to win the fight. I'm taking Matt Hamill in a unanimous decision victory. But Rampage is always one knockout for making me wrong. So now that we've went through and I've done somewhat of a breakdown analysis on the two competitors and their skills, we'll just go back one more time real quick through who I'm predicting to win. So go back down to the bottom. I'm taking Baroa. Moving on to the next one, I'm taking Michael McDonald, Gleison Tebow, Kendall Grove is not winning, sorry, Tim Boach, Miguel Torres, Brian Stan, Iago Alves, Stefan Struve, Frank Mir, and welcome to the big times, Matt Hamill, a career-defining victory. Those are my predictions and my breakdown for UFC 130. This has been Cage Minds. I'll put a results show up telling you guys how I did. Oh yeah, and something I'm clearing up from my last show. I was 6 right and 6 wrong from UFC 129. Check back for the next results show. This has been Cage Minds.